Kona Hei Hei has been around for absolutely years. It started life as a titanium hardtail back in the day when Project 2 rigid forks was a thing to have, and since then it's evolved over time into the bike it is now. Kona being a Canadian brand, they flew us out to British Columbia to go and test out the bike. That involved catching one big plane from Britain over to there, then catching one little plane, a very little plane, out to the smallest and weirdest airstrip that I've ever seen, which basically consisted of a shed by the side of a runway, and then a very long drive further into the interior to Retallick Lodge, which in the winter is a massive heli-skiing operation, and apparently it's got epic powder. I don't know what that means, something to do with Pablo Escobar, I think. If you've got deep enough pockets, you can get them to take you and they'll helicopter you up to the top of the hill, and you can ride trails that basically no one else can ride. In between dodging grizzly bears and being flown to the top of the hill on a helicopter, you manage to get more time in on the Hei Hei. So it's got 140 mil of travel at either end. All of the Hei Hei trail range actually get carbon fibre frames. In the regular Hei Hei there is actually an aluminium model, aluminum, if you prefer that. But I rode the middle of the range DL bike. That's got Fox 34 fork up front, it's got a Fox float DPS shock at the back, Shimano 11-speed drivetrain, strangely enough with a single ring rather than Shimano's usually preferred double, and that's got a 11 to 42 tooth range on it. The Shimano drivetrain is a little bit down on overall gear range compared to SRAM kit, but Kona have happily compensated for that and put on a 30 tooth chainring up front. The bike had a set of pretty bling-in carbon fibre and very wide WTB rims, strange enough on Hope hubs, and our bikes had non-standard rubber because obviously we're going to be riding in pretty chunky terrain, so we had big reinforced casings, not what the bike comes with. But the really interesting thing is the new frame design. Kona has traditionally always used single pivots, most of them have been linkage driven, and this bike is the same except the carbon fibre rear end has no seat stay pivot. Instead it relies on the flex in the carbon to deliver the 140 mil of travel. Having no pivot means that it's lighter, there's less stuff to wear out, all good things. The Hei Hei trail kind of splits the difference in terms of the geometry figures as well as travel with Kona's process range of bikes. That means that it's got a 68-degree head angle. The reach on a size large frame is 455 millimeters. That's not quite as long and quite as rad as their process bikes, and it's more sort of middle of the ground, more traditional trail bike. It's got pretty dinky stays at 425 millimeters, and all in all, it's kind of surprisingly not mad for a Kona bike. These are pretty kind of standard trail bike figures. Kona champions really dinky stems on all their other bikes, so it's a bit of a surprise to see quite a long stem on this. I think somewhere in the 60 to 70 millimeter range. That means that for my preferences, it's a tiny bit steep, that stem's a bit too long, but again, you can fix that by putting on a shorter stem. It's safe to say that the trails that we were riding were on the extreme end of the spectrum for a 140 mil lightweight trail bike, but the bike did admirably. The back end has got plenty of progression in it. You don't really notice that it's a flex stay bike, there's no weirdness going on there. It's nice and stiff, and at around 28 pounds, it's respectably lightweight, although not mind-blowing. One thing I did notice that was when you were pushing really, really hard, the Fox 34 fork had a bit of an issue with, I think it's probably going to be down to chassis flex, causing a bit of a binding, but basically that was mostly noticeable riding on the downhill trails that I'd ridden on the Operator the day before. You can't huck this bike into big braking bumps and expect to suck it up. It definitely spikes a bit in there. Apart from that, the Hei Hei really just like skips off the top of stuff. You can hustle it down some pretty serious trails, and it's really well managed when you're going back uphill too. One thing I really liked were the WTB carbon rims. I think they've got a 35 mil internal diameter, and that gives like a super chunky profile to the tyres. They're not plus tyres, but they kind of felt like they were. I think this might be the future for tyres. By the way, if you are interested in hearing more about my thoughts concerning the future of plus tyres, I wrote an article on BikeRadar recently, and you can check a link to that in the description. So, I really enjoyed riding it in Canada. I'm looking forward to getting one here to test, but there is one thing that you're definitely not going to enjoy, and that's the price. At £5,999 or $5,999, it's a hell of a lot of money for the bike that I rode here. XT spec, there is one above this, which has SRAM Eagle on it. Guess what, that's even more money. So whichever way you cut it, this bike's going to have such a tough time against keener priced rivals. The fact that this bike costs the same in US dollars as it does in pounds tells you all that you need to know.